Namaste, folks. Standing on your own feet, just notice what you're feeling. This is your scan for sensation, body scan. You're also noticing your breath. And then bring your focus more from your sensations to your breath. You can choose, do you just want to follow the breath in and back out again? Or do you want to start directing a more efficient breath? If you're going to go toward directing, you want to find 360 degrees of movement here in the lower ribs. So down to the bottom of your lungs. You're going to invite but not force even timing, so your inhalation and exhalation take the same amount of time. And finally, within that even timing, the rate of flow of your breath will remain consistent. So not dribble, dribble, flood, 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 pant, pant, whatever. It's constantly smooth. Again, if that feels like too much for you, just watch your breath. Stay with your breath for a few breaths here. Now take a moment to notice how you're aligned. Have you intentionally set up your even standing, Samastiti, where more of the weight is on the heels and outside edges of the feet? Outside edges of the feet are parallel. Feet lined up under hip bones, or one heel under each butt cheek will do the same thing. We're stacking the ribs over the hips, the head over the ribs, arms hanging off the back, off the shoulder blades. See if you can get to that place if you're not there already. Scan for new sensations for a moment. Notice if it impacts your breath. And let's take it over to either a wall with a spacer so that you have something roughly as much as your bottom sticks out between your ribs and the wall, and perhaps your head in the wall. Or what I like even better is a corner or a door jamb that sticks out into the room, because you can put that between both sides of your butt. And then you can notice what touches the wall. Again, we're not going to force anything, but we're finding that same alignment of the feet and legs. And we've got some feedback from this corner or from the wall to tell you, do you really have your ribs stacked over your hips? Is your head really stacked over your ribs? Remember, we don't want those ribs sticking forward. We'd like just below the shoulder blades to feel like it's generally in contact with the wall. But again, I can't say it enough, we are not forcing. Does this feel like what you did in the middle of the room? Step away from the wall, see if you can maintain that alignment. Take a breath or two. And then go back to the wall. Take your Samastiti back to the wall. Did anything change? Do you need to realign? Take it away from the wall again. See if you can really find all the little details of what this feels like. And one more time, take it back to the wall. So weight is on your feet, right? The only thing that's different is that we are actually touching the wall. And then take it out into whatever space you're working on. See if you can hold on to that alignment that you found. Realign your feet and your legs. Make sure your arms are hanging off your shoulder blades. And then notice, do you feel even on 2 feet? So we've aligned vertically from front to back. And we're doing a little bit of alignment from side to side. If you're not sure, try shifting your weight a little bit back and forth. See if you can keep that vertical alignment without the lower ribs pushing forward, without the head dropping forward. And then see if you can come to what feels like even on both feet. Are you even on both legs? Do you feel the same amount of weight on both sides of the hips or on both sides of the ribs? So places where you may feel the difference is maybe the waist will feel different to one side from the other. Maybe the shoulders and the ears, so the neck and shoulder distance may feel uneven. Check the arm weight. Does one arm feel like it's hanging more off of the shoulder blade than the other? So we're looking for an evenness right to left, which may not exist, right? We don't live in that ideal, perfect world. We live in this other universe where we're constantly finding compromises and getting close to and celebrating how close we can get to this idea of even standing. Then let's make it easier to drop your heel weight into the floor. So if you have a towel or a blanket, roll it up. If you have very stiff calves, meaning this tends to be tight, don't roll it thick. If you have a half dome, these are magic. So I'm going to start with my left foot. You can decide which of yours you want to start with. And we're putting the heel down on the floor and then the toes up as high on that dome as possible. Now, a couple of things are going to try and happen. Your butt is going to try and stick out behind you to make this easier. Your weight is going to try and fall to the inner ankle. So you may have to back your other foot up a little bit. Stack yourself up the same way you did in Samastiti. See if you can get the weight more toward the outside of the foot and really drop that heel weight into the floor, and then slowly. As soon as you feel that gentle pull on the back of the calf, you've gone far enough. You stop and you wait for something to perhaps slacken, and then you can decide whether you want to go further. Or you wait until you get that moment where you're sticking your butt out, where you're suddenly pitched backwards and falling, where you shift your hips to one side or the other, or where you drop your ankle. All of those inner ankle, those are all the places where we tend to avoid the stretch. Now, eventually, maybe we can actually take a full stride forward. Did you twist your hips? Another way to avoid the stretch, right? If you can't get to that full stride today, don't worry about it. Just make this, I would suggest making this a daily project. 30 seconds a day. Find a time when you're brushing your teeth, washing dishes, doing a thing where you can stand still, stretching one calf. If you can do it for a full minute, yay, or 2 minutes, go for it. At this point, back off, and let's see what happens on the other side. So your heel is planted really firmly, toes are up on your rolled blanket, towel, your half dome if you're lucky enough to have one. And then again, we're going to check, are the hips staying in alignment? So we've got our even standing. It's really not correct to call it even, but we're going for that vertical alignment because we're disturbing the ankle so much with the dome. We don't really have an even sense, but we want to line ourselves up as if. So we check to make sure that the hips didn't tip, they didn't twist, they didn't rock. So we want square and level hips. And we want to make sure that the ankle is doing the same thing. So we're keeping the weight toward the outer edge of the ankle. And if we focus there, that tends to put our ankle in the alignment we need. If you're feeling the stretch in the foot, not a good thing. Up the calf is what we want. And then again, when we're coming off, we're going to back up. And if you decide you want to stay there, yay, the pause button is great, isn't it? Let's get a little bit up into shoulders. So start with your interlace of your hands. And if you need to go back and forth to wake things up, if you need to play a little bit locally to loosen up the hands, go for it. And then we're going to find that Samastiti alignment. Pay particular attention to your ribs because they're going to want to go with you. We're going into that upward hand interlace, right? So we're lifting the elbows up off the underarms while we gently tack the lower ribs down toward our ankles. How's the back of the neck? That doesn't really need to be involved. It may be trying to be. If you can feel your shoulder blades start to slide down your back, that will help to release the neck. If your neck is falling forward, it's much harder to get your arms up. And if your shoulder blades are trying to come up, it's also harder to get your arms up. And for some of you, the issues are elsewhere, in which case you're pushing forward and finding that stretch gently. Remember, you can make it a motion. And then let it go. And go for the same thing with the other interlace. So now we have the other thumb on top. A moment for those who have not done the earlier videos, right? Probably the unusual interlace, unless you've been making a project out of finding your interlace. So weight is still on the heels, outside edges of the feet. The lower ribs are tacked down, the elbows in front, reaching up off the underarms. So this lovely hand clasp allows us to have one arm helping the other as we press the arms, especially the finger joints, up toward the ceiling, and the feet and legs down toward the floor. So what is willing to stretch through the torso? Find that length in there. One more big breath into those ribs, spread them in all directions, and as you exhale, let the arms down. And let's find your active exhalation. So we've done this again in one of the earlier videos. Start your exhalation as normal, then gently bring your inner thighs and your pelvic floor up, wrap your abdominal corset around and in so that all of those muscles working are pushing more and more and more breath out. I'm running out. Let it go, big inhalation. Do that again and pay attention to the sensations that you get on this end of the exhalation as you're actively contracting, because you're going to need that core working for you. If it suddenly turns into tightness in the chest, you've gone too high. This is definitely a lower torso sensation. Do it one more time. You may want to add the resistance of pursing your lips and breathing out through your mouth, or putting your tongue close to the roof of the mouth, which will make a sort of sound depending upon how you do it. And it will help you track that exhalation all the way to the end. And then again, let go and go for the inhalation. If you have a wall, it's ideal. If you have a piece of furniture that's not too low, also good. I'm going to spend a moment for people in a chair. You'll want a second chair or a desk in front of you. We're going to start to work upper body. If you are at a wall, you're going to go and place your elbows against the wall and decide how far you want your feet from the wall. Because the further your feet are away from the wall, the more work you will be doing. If you are in a chair, make your legs wide enough so that you can put your forearms, ideally on a desk that's higher, or on a chair that's lower. Railroad tracks with the forearms, same thing on the wall. And then you're just going to press down. So it's different in the chair to being at the wall, but we're doing what we can. So you will feel it in the chair more through the upper back and chest. At the wall, we're starting to find how can I use my core as well as that sense of my shoulder blades pushing through into my, not just my elbows, but my forearms. So press the hands into the wall. If you are sagging or if your butt is sticking out, get all that lined back up. If it's too much with the feet further away, bring the legs in closer. And if you've been hanging out on the wall for a while, stop, relax, take a breath. Because now we're going to move this same sort of forearm plank onto a chair, but now we're going to take it down onto your knees. So those of you who are able to get up and down out of the chair onto the floor and then back up onto the chair, absolutely, you can join us here. So we're taking things to the knees so that we have a less of a lever, but we're using a chair or whatever we've got. And if you don't have a chair, use the wall and come down to your knees. So again, we don't want to sag the hips. We don't want to pull the hips up. We're going for a straight line between your knees and your underarms. We're not letting the chest sag either. The shoulder blades are going to push away from each other and down into your forearms. And yes, your corset is engaged, not necessarily as firmly as at the end of the exhalation when we were creating kind of an overuse. But you want to feel inner thighs pushing up into your pelvic floor pushing up gently into your abdomen, and that gentle corset that's contracting around your lower abdomen. And then push yourself back to let it go. Either put yourself back in your chair or put yourself back up on your feet. And then pause for a moment just to notice, what are you feeling? How are you breathing? And let's build a back bend, whether you're in a chair or standing. So we want a firm, solid stance vertically here. We're going to lift the navel up off the pubic bone, and then continue to lift from the navel up to the base of the breastbone. This does not allow you to stick the ribs out in front. We're simply lifting the entire front of the torso up off of the legs. And you'll notice at some point that your shoulders, the top of your shoulders, start to go backwards behind the base of your breastbone. Your head does not drop back. Keep the back of the neck long. If it's really tough, bring the chin in. So at some point, you're going to need to anchor down into your feet. And you will notice that the further you go into your back bend, the more you have to shift weight toward the front of the foot. That's okay. Otherwise, you're going to fall over backwards. So keep that sense of solid down into your feet. And again, from where you already are, lift your navel up off your pubic bone, lift all the way up that front line of the body. So I'm drawing a single line with my finger, but it really happens on both sides. Keep the back of the neck long. There's a point in the rib cage that really likes to arch. Whether we use that or not is a different story. It's right below your shoulder blades, and you want to feel those bottom points of the shoulder blades starting to roll underneath and forward. So underneath your underarm area. And one more time, anchor down in your legs and then lift up the front line of the body a little bit more. Find something else that's willing to let go. See if you can feel that place below the shoulder blades. Put a giant kangaroo tail or a kickstand, or maybe you've got somebody gently helping you by pressing an arm across the back or a fist into the spine, so that you feel that that is the high point of your back bend. Anchor once more into your feet. On your next inhalation, you're going to lift the back of the body up and over the front of the body so that you're back in your even standing. So that you have a sense now of finding a back bend. So those of you on a chair, we're going to use a different stance. One leg will go extended in front of you. The other leg will go under the chair as far as you're comfortable. Best to sit on the edge of the chair for this. You can decide whether that foot under the chair has the toes tucked under or whether you're on the top of the foot. Those of us who are standing are going to go into a parallel pose. So we've done the Padasanas, Parshva Padasana, where we turned the feet partly to one side. We're going to do that again, but this time we're going to turn the back foot further. So we want to get those legs out to a maybe length of one of your legs. And then turn, I'm going to turn so my left foot is forward. You decide what you want to do here. So this is 12 o'clock on my little world here. My front foot is still pointing toward 12 o'clock. My back foot is going to turn all the way toward 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock. That's the outside of that foot. And the back thigh for this pose is turning inward. That's going to square your hips towards your 12 o'clock. You also want to level your hips, so one is not higher than the other. Feel yourself pushing backwards into the back heel. If you are having trouble standing upright, your balance is going wonky, take your feet a little bit wider side to side. Otherwise, you have your feet almost in line. Ideally, you will eventually have your front heel in line with the arch of the back foot, but go for just the general what you can. Before we let this go, Rotate your back thigh in again. Now square out the hips. And then we're going to rotate out of it. So turn out your back leg, and that'll bring you back to the front, and then turn to the other side. I'm going to do the other side facing you so you can see what's happening here, right? So now I've got my right foot front, and I've got the outside of my back foot going relatively toward 11 o'clock. So almost parallel is what's going on here. I swivel my back thigh to a rotated inward stance, and I let it bring my hips with me. So those of you with balance stuff, this is what I mean when I say take the feet wider apart. And then you're going to have to play with where are the hips in terms of level so that they're not tipped either side. Squaring is that action of bringing the hips headlights straight forward, right? So if you think of those hip bones as headlights. Again, press the weight into the back heel, especially the outside of the back heel. Notice what's going on with those hips. Did they unlevel? Did they twist? If they twisted, focus on turning in the back thigh, right? So inner thigh goes around and backwards. And then to come out of it, turn out the back thigh, and then you can bring your feet back underneath you and check in. So that's a straight leg parallel stance, and we'll be using that for Parsvottanasana, which sounds like a bunch of postures and shapes that we use. Parsva, when you hear it, always lets you know that your side body is going to be involved. We are not going into the full posture today. We're just going to work more on that stance. So head back out or change legs in your chair. Again, I'm going to start with my left foot as the front foot. We're lining the feet up. We're turning the back thigh in. We're anchoring in the outside of that back heel. So now we want to build a back bend on top of the stance of this leg. So start with your hands on your hips and lift your ribs straight up like an elevator by pushing down on your hands. And then start to build that back bend. Now you will find the lower abs challenging to lift because we've got a leg behind us now. So we're stretching into a hip joint, not just into the torso. More is not better here. What the big thing we want to do is focus on the square level hips and feeling that the high point of the back bend is the bottom of your breastbone in front, bottom of your sternum, and that point in your spine just below the points of your shoulder blades in the back. Feel how that back bend, as you lift up, is starting to stretch the sides of your torso. And if we keep those hips square, you may find that there's a bit of a loosening on the outside of the hips, which means that your inner thighs are going to have to take over holding you up. So to come out, come over the top of the back of the body, and then rotate around to the other side. So my right foot is front. Back foot is either pointing to 11 or 1 o'clock on your clock. Once the feet are positioned, leave them where they are, and that back thigh turning in only turns the hips. It should not be throwing weight to the inside of the back foot. We want to keep that weight on the outer back heel. Once you've got those hips square and level, and you know your balance is not flaking out on you, hands onto your hips, lift the ribs straight up. Inhale, lift the lower abs, lift the upper abs, let the top of the shoulders and the head go back. Back of the neck is long. So we're looking up, but we're not looking straight up toward the ceiling. Depending upon the size of your room, it's more like the corner where the ceiling and the wall join. Check again. Outside of the back heel, rotate the back thigh in. Are your hips square and level? Can you lift the ribs a little further? Lift a little further up the front of the body. Feel the support underneath the shoulder blades, all the way back down into that back heel again. Next inhalation, the back body is going to lift up and over the front body, and then you can turn yourself forward and get your legs back underneath you. So those of you who are in a chair, again, second surface in front of you is ideal. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. You're just going to come into a forward fold where you're leaning your elbows on your knees and then your head in your hands. If you have a second surface, you want to pat it a little bit. Easier when you're not sitting on the padding. Something soft, and you're going to aim your forehead. You know, if you're very flexible, you can get your forehead all the way down to the chair in front of you. Sure, go for it. Those of us who are standing are going to take a forward fold. So we've done that. Stick your butt out, find the folding at the hips. We're doing that here too. And you can decide, do you need something where you've got something fairly tall, a counter or the back of a chair, in which case, forehead. Those of you with back issues, this is where you stop and you think of a slight arch in the spine. If you have more flexibility, meaning you can widen your bottom a little further and you can fold only at the hips so that your belly goes lower, see if you can get the top of your head onto that soft surface. Now, some of you will be even more flexible and you don't even need a chair. You just need a block stack that allows you to, again, fold only from the hip joint and get to that point where the top of the head rests. So either forehead or top of the head, both are very relaxing for the supported Uttanasana. If you're feeling discomfort on the top of your head, or if you're feeling discomfort in your neck, please stop and come out. If your arms will hang and feel supported by the floor, sure. If not, let them rest on the chair. How are your heels doing and the placement of your feet? Can you still feel weight on the back of your heel, especially the outer heel? Think of sticking your butt out a little bit more. So the fold at the front of the hip gets deeper and deeper. And the deeper we go at the front of the hip, the wider it feels like our bottom is going. And then gently use the arms and the core to start you up. And then feel your bottom and your hamstrings engage to get you the rest of the way up on top of your legs again. And notice how you're doing. Okay, we're going back to that idea of being on your forearm and on your knees. So those of you in the chair, do what you did before. If you can get all the way down to the floor and get all the way back up, sure, join us on the floor. Those of us who are headed to the floor are coming all the way to forearms, which are making railroad tracks, and knees. It's really tempting to just put your hips down. There's not much work going on here. You might be getting a little bit of a back pain. It also can be tempting to stick your butt out. Again, we want to feel that engagement of the core. So that lift that we did in the lower abdomen when we were back bending, that happens here as well. That pubic bone lift up to the navel. That's joined by the inner thighs going up into the pelvic floor going up into the lower abdomen, and then that corset wrapping around. Your chest again is not dropping. Shoulder blades are pushing away from each other and down into your forearms. And then you can push yourself back. And let's come just for a moment into a seat. And I'll address the folks who are on the chair first. So on your chair, we're going to come back to that idea of one foot going backwards and the other foot in front. This time, the foot in front is going to have the knee bent. The foot that's going backwards, if you can get it along the side of the chair, that's really wonderful because you may be able to get further. If you have arms on the chair, don't worry about it. Just take the foot underneath and then you can lean back a little bit. But if you can get that foot to drop down alongside the chair, maybe you'll be able to take the knee backwards. We want to get into that hip joint a little bit more. So those of you who've been patiently waiting on the floor, we're going to take the legs wide here. So one knee, I'm going to stay on my right knee, is on the side of the mat. And then I'm going to move a foot forward, and that's going to the other side of it. And then I'm just going to drop my hips forward. Now, some of you may want to put your hands down on the floor or on a chair in front of you or on some blocks in front of you. If you lift the torso up, you'll get more of a stretch, which may not be a good thing, in the front of the hip joint. I'm going to turn from the side because there's one more thing I'd like you to see. I could do this so that this front leg hip comes forward and I'm kind of sideways on. And you may feel some of the stretch, but it's not going to be the big helpful thing that we want to get to. You want to see if you can almost turn the back thigh in with the way you did in that standing pose, your Parsvottanasana stance. We'd like to get the hips square and we would like to get them level. And then push your way backwards or on the chair, change legs. And again, start wide. Now, the other thing I'm not showing, but that you can do is pad the surface that your knee is on. Your knee may be going, oh my God, this is horrible, I hate you. It's okay. Build up cushions, pillows, fold up a blanket. So again, feet are wide. You can decide you want to put your hands down, and that can be leaning on something in front of you. It doesn't have to be the floor. Can we, even if you're leaning forward, can we square up the hips by bringing that back hip around, turning that inner thigh in. And if you're able to hang out up here on your knee, we're letting the hip pull forward toward that front heel. One more element. I'm going to turn sideways again. So that front foot, we can do a lot of nasty stuff to this knee by having the knee all the way forward over the toes. You're looking at the angle of my shin into my foot. If I move that foot further, my knee can go over the ankle or even possibly slightly behind it, which takes a lot less pressure off of the front knee there. Now you can also, depending upon what your ankles like to do, tuck your toes under. That will put more pressure on your knee. But if this is causing foot cramps, that's not a requirement here. And again, to come out, push yourself back. Then come to sit on the floor. Make sure that you have some things to stack up if you need to. And I am going to change the camera angle while you're setting yourselves up. So if you are on a chair, we're going to be playing first with rotating the legs, but I'm going to cover a couple of positions for you. Sorry, I'm headless at the moment. One, if you can do it, is to get on the outside edges of your feet. And you can do this if you're really able, a footstool or a second chair. So we'll be using that position. We will also be using the Sukhasana position, which will have your ankles crossed. And you can do that again on the floor or with the feet up on the chair. So let's start though. Hello again. Let's start playing with leg rotation. So just let your legs hang out in front of you. If it's very challenging to sit upright, remember you want to stack yourself, build a throne as high as you need, or do these things in the chair. So we're just moving from the hip joint. If you can stack everything up without causing a lot of challenges for your internal organs, sure, do it that way. And start changing where these legs are. We've done this before in this video series anyway. We're turning the legs from the hip joint, right? So if you're just turning your feet and your knees are not going far, you're doing some cool things in your ankles. But we want to find this, the knees rotating away from each other and then maybe toward each other. And then bring those feet. I'm going to stack myself up a stack here so that you can see. We want to bring those feet to a point where they can touch each other. Now, if I lower myself, I'll wind up with a more of a challenge to stay upright. You can see it better from this side. So, and you can see my knee is way above my hip joint. We're working this pose, so it's okay to have that happen, but we don't need it happening a whole lot. So I'm going to put myself up on something, which then makes it easier. We'll turn that side again. And now can you see my knee has dropped a little bit closer to the hip joint, which is, it's easier for the spine, and the placement of the spine is more healthy for your lower back. Some of you will also be noticing horrible issues with your inner thighs by now. So you stack a thing, right? You can use a block or a book, and it supports your thigh a little bit, and you can put it out or you can bring it in close. Those of you who don't need it, yay. Also check your knees. So foot position can make a difference here. We're in a Baddha Konasana position of our legs, but we're being very loose about it. So those of you who have something underneath that's helping to support, take it out just a little bit so that you can start to gently kind of flap your legs here. This is kind of a young child's version of butterfly flapping, right? These are delicate, fragile wings, so we are not slamming our knees to the ground. Instead, we're thinking closer up to the hip joint. We're going to let that drop gently down and back up. More of the butterflies sunning in the fields rather than frantically trying to escape winter weather. Just keep those legs going. If it starts to feel like something is really unhappy, either right around the hip joint or here on what's normally your inner thigh, again, make sure you have some support. It can feel like you're not getting as much done. That's not an accurate sensation. When we have a little bit of support, the nervous system allows more fluency as a gatekeeper, so that eventually we're able to find a little bit more range of motion and a little bit more and a little bit more. We're doing it bit by bit rather than forcing all at once. Just keep those legs moving. So it doesn't have to be big flap. If that feels good, sure, go for it. It can just be a real gentle kind of a pulse. So here the legs are turned out a lot. Notice which direction the top of your thigh is facing. For some of you, it may be straight backwards, right? And your inner leg is more up toward the ceiling. That's that external rotation. We've also opened the thighs wide for some of you. If your feet are further out in front of you, you won't have those legs opened out as wide. That's okay. We're working with your hip joint, not with somebody else's. Certainly not the ideal one. You can aim for something while you stay in your own reality. And then we have the knees bent a lot, or some amount, right? Because we're looking to keep those feet close together. And then let it go. So if you're sitting on the chair, just come back to neutral. I'm not happy with how my blanket is folded, so I'm going to refold it a bit. And then we're going to come to sit in Sukhasana. So that's that cross-ankled posture. Sweet, smiling, sitting posture. So when we cross ankles, and I'm going for left ankle in front, think of your feet as roughly 90 degrees. And yes, one foot will be underneath the other shin, and one heel will be underneath the other shin. So it's not the same as having one leg in front of the other. We are intentionally putting a support here. And if this is miserable on your ankles, you can use blankets, towels, whatever you need to wrap and create some padding. So find a moment, again, we've got legs externally rotated, not quite as far as for that last position. And we've got them opened out, again, not quite as far. We want to be able to stick our butt out, make it wide. Sitting poses are basically a forward fold. Your legs are in front of you. Instead of your legs being upright and your torso going forward, we've just tipped it on its side. And you want to be able to have that same alignment in your torso that you had in your standing pose in your Samastiti. We're just hanging out here with the ribs over the hips, sitting toward the front of the sits bones, right? You may want to poke underneath there and feel where are those bony prominences, ischial tuberosities, that we, when we're sitting efficiently, we're rocking on those. Right? Ribs are not sticking out. Head is not collapsing forward. So when we talk about arms on the back, the head position and the arms on the back position are very connected. It's impossible to get your, well, it's not impossible, but it's very challenging to get your shoulders on your back, your shoulder blades on your back when your head is forward. And it's very challenging to get your head back when your shoulders are forward. There's too much tug of war going. So they work together. You want to feel like your ears over your shoulders, cheekbones over collarbones, while the shoulder blades hang out on your back, even though your hands are in front of you. And then change the crossing, now that we hung out there for a bit. So if this kind of a pose is challenging for you, if you're really having to work it, again, you can support here. You can make the platform that you're sitting on higher. You can make it lower if it feels like your legs just want to collapse even openly to the side. You can also take your feet further away from you. Worst comes to worst, it's better to put yourself up on a chair and work comfortably and easily with how you can align your torso, and then gradually let your hips work into this on the floor pose than it is to try to force yourself and go, oh, well, it doesn't really feel very good, but I'll just tough it out. Your nervous system is going, yeah, sure, go ahead and brutalize me, see how well that works out. We do it an awful lot in normal life, normal, abnormal life, but it doesn't work in yoga, right? One of the first commandments in yoga is do no harm. And all those little discomforts add up to a lot of nervous system dysregulation at the very least, which then makes us less able to deal with stresses. There's also that commandment to tell the truth. And if we're trying to be somebody that we're not, if we're trying to have hip joints that we don't really have, we're not telling the truth. By now, have I distracted you long enough to have been in Sukhasana for a bit? Let your legs escape. Find a place that's comfortable, because we're going back into Sukhasana in a moment. Check for sensations. How are you feeling? Do you need to fidget? Right? So we notice what we're feeling, and then we can be responsive to what we're feeling. And then fold back into Sukhasana. Again, I'm going to take my left ankle in front of my right. Let's go for that interlace that we did while we were standing. So I've got my left ankle in front. I'm going to cross my right thumb as the top thumb in my interlace and extending the hands out through the finger joints. So it's not pressing flat wrists. It's pressing a rounded dome shape through the hands. Extending the elbows, feel where your shoulder blades are. Can you pull them away from each other? And then push the hands far away from you. If at some point you are arching your ribs or you reach a stopping point, stop there and just push the hands away and bring them back in. If you can get the hands all the way overhead, go for it. Push your index finger joint up toward the ceiling. Do you have to lift your legs up if your arms are going up? The answer is no, but your body may think differently, right? See what you can allow to release down there. Because we would like that upward reach of the hands in this position, Parvatasana. So it's another version of Parva, Parjva, which talks about our sides. If you reach those elbows up off the underarms, and you reach the outside of the arms up as well, can you feel that stretch through the side of the torso? Let it all down. Let your legs escape again for a moment. Notice sensations. Notice your breath. And then fold the ankles again. This time I've got my right in front. We're letting the feet come to about a 90-degree at your ankles. Again, pad what you need if this is uncomfortable on your feet. You may find that on one side you want to be stacked higher than on the other. Do that. So opposite thumb to the front ankle is on top. We're extending out. You can play locally in the hands as much as you need to. See if you can press the finger joints further away from you than the wrist joint. And shoulder blades are going to follow the arms. When you reach about the forehead and start going higher, the shoulder blades have to go down your back. That's part of that head-shoulder connection there. So when I'm saying reach the elbow up off the underarm, it's this part of the elbow. And then the outer arm is this part. So back to the point of the elbow. And we're using the arms as leverage with very heavy hips and PS very heavy tops of thighs down into the floor to be able to traction through the spine, through the entire torso. So for starters, feel the literal sides of the body. So you can think of the fleshy parts. And then you can work inward. Make sure that you're not pulling just up the front, or sometimes we do pulling just up the back. See if you can get through the sides, and then the sides start to meet in the front and the back. And on an exhalation, let it go. Those of you on the floor, head into constructive rest. That's lying on your back, knees bent, feet flat on the floor, palms facing the ceiling. I'm going to address the people in the chair for a moment, and then we'll come back to it. So while you're lying on the floor, if you need to fidget, sure, go for it. See if you can observe sensations and stay with your breath. So in a chair, you're going to sit toward the front of the chair, and if you can shift yourself sideways in the chair, go for it. You may be able to put your feet up on something, but it's not necessary. So if you're putting your feet up, again, you're sitting toward the front of the chair, and you're going to lean back in your chair. Even if your feet are on the floor, the version I'm going to do, you're going to lean back in your chair. You're going to keep your shoulders glued to the back of the chair, and you're going to let yourself shift over toward one hip as much as you are able to without getting to the side of the hips. So you want to stay on the side of your butt cheek, because otherwise you're going to wind up on bony prominences that do not feel good. Stay here as long or as little as you like, keeping the thighs glued together. We don't want to slide the knees apart. If you can't shift sideways in the chair, don't worry about it. Those of us on the floor, we're going to roll all the way over onto your right side. Curl up as small as you can. So you want to aim for knee toward nose. You don't have to get there, just aim there. Notice that your knees, if you reach one arm in front of you, maybe touching your elbow. Use that hand to hold the legs down. You want to feel the knees stacked right on top of each other. And then gently, with permission from all these body parts that are going to be impacted, open that top shoulder away from you and reach the other arm out. Now that may not feel so good on your shoulder. Bend your elbow if that's a problem. Did your knees come unstacked? You will not be able to twist as far with your knees stacked, but your lower back will be protected while you're twisting, which is what we want. Notice where you feel the resistance. Why does your shoulder not reach the floor if it doesn't? If it does reach the floor, where are the places where it feels tight when you're trying to take a deep breath in? Just let yourself breathe into those places. And then come on back to your side and roll over to the other side to do the same thing. Those of you on the chair, if you were staying in the twist for that whole long time, and it felt good, sure, stay for that long and then go to the other side. If you need to come in and out of a movement before I give you that exit cue, that's fine. So again, we want to stack the legs. We're curling up as tight as we can. So knees may come to your elbow, and in that case, you can use that hand just to hold the knees. This top knee is going to try and draw backwards. That will also happen if you're sitting in a chair. And then we're gently rolling ourselves back. So again, places that can feel uncomfortable. Shoulder, that means bend the elbow. You may be feeling uncomfortable in your back, in which case, come out of the twist to the point where you no longer feel the discomfort. If your knees are pulling apart, you have certainly gone too far. So those legs are our anchor. We're on a side hip, side thigh, side shin. Are your feet up off the floor? Let them drop. And again, we're finding the tight places, which may be in unexpected places, and we're breathing deeply into them. So we're using the breath as a massage to loosen up the tightness. And then come on back to your sideline, come back to constructive rest, or come back to a neutral seat in your chair. We're going to do that again. Those of you with back stuff, you're just going to repeat what we just did. Those of you who know that your core is strong and that your back is not an issue, and you don't want to be testing this out today, you want to make sure that you feel very comfortable before you take it, this particular entry. Your knees are going to curl up towards your chest and glue your thighs together. So we're gluing the legs, gluing the ankles. At some point, your shoulder, your back shoulder may come off the floor. That's okay. Aim your knees toward your left elbow. And then we're in the same position we were in before, but we entered a different way. So your legs may have landed in a slightly different position. Those of you with a weak core, those of you with back issues, you will discover getting in that there's a moment where either your breath stops or you feel misery or pain. That's your clue that you're starting from your side. As you strengthen your core over time, and if your back problems resolve, you can use this entry. One more breath cycle here. As you exhale, let go as much as you can into that twist. And then bring, again, either back onto your side or bring the knees up to your chest. Are they still glued together? And then take them over to the other elbow. So again, you can use that hand over on the side of the legs to help hold the legs down, and then you release the torso in a twist away from the legs. Where you are looking depends upon how easy it is for you to twist. Yes, at some point you may be able to turn the neck far enough to look toward the hand that's moving away from your legs. But otherwise, just look up toward the ceiling or even in the direction of your legs. It's very helpful to look toward your legs anyway to check and make sure that your knees have not escaped in our zeal to make the twist a quantity rather than quality thing. You can also rock the head back and forth to loosen up the neck. One more breath cycle here. Feel anything that's willing to loosen in the twist. And again, if your core is strong, bring everything back to the center, come to your constructive rest. Those of you in the chair, you're going to just find your relaxation place. We're going to talk a little bit about Shavasana and relaxation this time. I've been leaving this to you on your own. So when we enter relaxation, sitting on the chair, you want to be able to lean back on something. You decide whether you want your feet up or your feet on the floor. You want the weight of your arms and your legs supported by something. Here on the floor, fortunately, we have that. If our head is tipped way back because we've got rounding in the rib cage or distortion in the neck, you want some sort of a pillow that will bring support for your shoulders This is really not ideal, but it's what I have at hand. Because if you have shoulders that round up, you want to support the shoulders and you want to support the head as well. Some of us just have issues with the neck, and we can just put a pillow, a folded blanket would be a better idea, or a folded towel. Some of us prefer around underneath the neck. You want to feel very well supported. Some of us, and you will feel this in a moment, will feel like we want a little bit of a support, perhaps a rolled washcloth underneath our lower back. We're going to explore, can we extend the legs? But before you do that, rock a little bit on your hips. We did that way back at the beginning of the first video. And you want to see if you can find a center point where you're not on your tailbone and you're not on your waist. And feel where your back curve is there. If it's a very big arch, put something underneath that very big arch. Then see where your ribs are resting. See if they will release so that the heaviest point is just below your shoulder blades. You'd like the weight of the head supported behind the bridge of the nose without the chin tipped much higher than the forehead. And here's where we're going to move things. So extend one leg out. Make it a little bit wider, or a lot wider perhaps, than hip distance apart. And then slowly slide the other leg out. And kind of windshield wiper your legs a little bit. Let them fall where they want to. We're not trying to hold alignment. Did that just tip you to your tailbone or create a big arch under your lower back? If so, you have a couple of choices. You can bring a chair close to your bottom and put your lower legs up on the chair, or you can find some support for underneath your thighs, not underneath your knees, underneath your thighs, fairly close to your bottom, until you feel like you're back on the middle of your hips. Then feel where your shoulder blades are. They're probably pushed a little bit up towards your ears. Can you widen them and tuck them a little bit under your rib cage? And then roll your arms so that the thumb side is heavy. Then do that on the other side. So we're tucking the shoulder blades, not toward each other, but a little bit down toward the waist, which will put them under the rib cage. And we'd like the arms to roll heavily toward the thumb side. If your shoulders do not like that, don't force it. We want to be able to feel like the floor is really supporting us, so that our thighs are supported, not hovering, so that our calves are supported, not hovering, so that our heels somewhere, perhaps on the back, perhaps more to the outside of the heels, are supported. Middle of the hips supported, middle of the ribs supported, middle of the head supported. The arms, you'll notice some differences in where the contact points are. Back of the hand somewhere, your wrists may be up or not. So where do your arms feel like they're supported by the floor? You're going to let your entire body give in to those support points. You could close your eyes if you're comfortable. We're not going to stay here long today because I want to get you in and then back out of Shavasana. But it's a place that you can stay for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Just to let your nervous system deeply relax. Your mind will probably wander if you stay for a while. If it does the wandering, and it will, and you will notice, be gentle, be amused. It's what your mind is designed to do. We're asking it to be disciplined in a different way. We'll ask it to find unwavering attention. And you can give it tasks. You can help it direct relaxation in areas that are having trouble giving into the support of the floor. Odd as that may seem. You can scan the body for those areas of tension. The mind can be doing that. The mind can be watching the breath go in and out. And then when you're ready to come out, you'll take a few deep breaths. We start with breath, and we feel where breath moves the body. So ribs, belly, perhaps other areas. It may move into the shoulders and arms, may move into the neck and head. It may move down through the hips into the legs. There's a lot of movement that comes from the breath that we're often not aware of. And then find places in the body that are willing to move.
So if the answer is nothing, sure, stay here for a while, but kind of listen to these directions, hold them in your working memory until you need them. If you need to get up, because time is a factor, move the small things, fingers, toes, joints in your hands, feet, wrists. Open and close your jaw, that's a joint. We want to get all the joints moving. So you can roll the legs and their hip joints. You can roll the arms and their shoulder joints. You can start bending elbows and knees. You can roll your hips and your ribs. That'll get your spine moving. Little fidgets and squirms into side bends. It's like rounds and arch. Tipping your head back, turning your head side to side, moves the joints in your spine and your neck. And when all your joints have moved at least a little bit, and no other body parts are saying, oh, stretch me, move me, you can do circus tricks as long as that's what your body's asking for. Once you have moved everything and are done moving, roll to your right side, knees bent. I'm going to say again, right side, knees bent, head supported. And we're just going to reconnect with the world around you here. So one of the things that we don't think of as gravity, unless we're on our way down, right? Gravity is the fact that as you lie on your side, you are balanced. If you're in your chair, you've moved, but at this point you want to stop moving. You definitely are not rolling to one side. Just continue to lean back on the chair. Perhaps you want to put your feet on the floor. You don't have to if you're not ready. Excuse me. And we're just going to observe the balance and the pressure, that feeling of weight in areas. So the heavy pressure against the floor or against the chair is part of gravity. Then notice the shape you're making. That's you in space. It's how we take up space. The thing we notice when we bash into the furniture or run into other people in a crowd. If you can, keep your eyes closed here. Then we've got what are the 5 special senses. We've got taste. Notice the taste in your mouth. You may be very used to it, or you may be going, yeah, which is okay. Reactions are fine. Just notice. Notice smells. So the smell of the world around you. Again, you may be used to it. You may not be noticing anything. We've got the senses of the sense of touch here, what we feel on our skin. So there's pressure, right, from furniture, light pressure from clothes, medium or even heavy pressure from other body parts. We have temperature sensors. Is it chilly? Is it warm? Again, we may not notice because we may have the thermostat set to that comfortable, I don't feel anything. If things are moving, if your world is rattling, or if air is moving over your skin, there are sensors for that. Notice that. Notice what sounds come to your ears. Notice if you suddenly start straining to hear things. Can you let your ears relax and just let the sounds come in? You may be in a quiet environment. The only sound may be my voice. Or maybe it's very noisy. Or maybe it's noisy inside because you're ready for a meal and there's all sorts of gurgling. Those sounds count. And then finally, open up your eyes. Let them wander around a bit. We want to notice at a really basic level. So for Shavasana, I didn't mention this earlier. If you wear spectacles, from now on when you do Shavasana, take them off because it will help small muscles around the eyes and nose relax more. Even without your specs, we don't need clear vision. We just want to notice what are the shapes, what are the colors, how much light is there. We're not looking for the meaning of, oh, that's a table, that's a shelf, that's a book, that's a floor. We want to see more basic. Now, you may have other senses that I didn't address. If you know where the electrical outlets and power lines are, you've got an electrical sense, you can get that on board before you open your eyes. If you always know which compass direction you're facing, you have a magnetic sense, you can get that on board before you open your eyes. We usually leave vision to last because unless you are blind, you depend more on vision than on your other senses. Now, if you have other senses that I'm not aware of, there are some cultures that deal with 14 basic senses. I don't know what they all are, but if you have any of them, go for it. So we did movement, we did reconnection,
And here's where we're going to transition back to vertical. So this will apply to those of you in a chair as well. We're not going to be leaning back anymore. If your left arm is strong and you're on the floor, use your left arm pushing into the floor to push you up to both elbows. Let your head hang. On your chair, you're going to slowly start bringing yourself off the back of the chair and come back into your neutral sitting. Do this in stages, whether you're on the floor or in the chair. You want all the body parts to be okay. So if your left arm was not strong, you're going to turn until you can use your right arm as well. And we're slowly going to pour more weight onto the spine and onto the hips. Think of the head coming up last. Use the arms to help push you up further onto your hips. If you reach a point of discomfort, either lower yourself back down or move around or do both. Excuse me, apparently my lungs want to come out of my mouth. So we're slowly, maybe being vertical, we'll put them back in. We're slowly putting ourselves back up onto our hips, onto our sits bones, onto our spine, bringing the weight up of our head up on top of the whole stack. Then find whatever leg position and whatever props you need to get into a leg position that allows you to stack your bones up so that you can finish in vertical. You do not need this leg position. If nothing else works, this is often one that folks can get into. We care about the torso being stacked. And we are going to observe again, after we come out of Shavasana, scan the body. What are the sensations now? How are you breathing? Great job doing something for yourself.